Hey guys, so today I'm going to be showing you how to make a topiary that is high impact and cheap. Something that's very affordable for your garden that you can pick up at any big box garden center. So all of these in particular were all purchased from my local Home Depot. I personally have had great success in going to Home Depot at like sometime in March, maybe into early April, just before people are really going out to start looking for plants for their garden for spring. And by doing it then, I'm really able to go through and just scour all of the boxwoods, pull them all out and get in there, kind of separate it, pull it apart, and see which ones have the best potential to be a topiary. So this one in particular here is the one that I'm going to be working with today. So this one is slightly different than the others. This one is a Green Mountain boxwood. All of the others have always been labeled as English boxwoods. Now, these other four have always been extremely slow growing. I've only trimmed them max twice since I've had them. And that is including whenever I took them from just a regular shrub. So when this one was purchased, it was just a full shrub, very similar to this cone-shaped one, but it was very full. It was just a blob. Went through, took all the lower limbs out, and was able to shape it into this wonderful little ball. Now, this one, it's going to need a little bit more time. It doesn't have as much fullness as what these others have had, and what I've found in the past. The selection was a lot thinner than what it's been in years past, but this one's a wonderful candidate because it has a wonderful centralized trunk. Now, I am going to do a light, and when I say light, very, very light trim. I'm just going to basically hit the top of this so I can get it rounded off and give it something along this shape. Now, it will probably be another year or so before this one is anywhere close to looking like this. And that's okay. It's all a part of the process of just, having those in the garden. It's not going to be instant topiary, but for the cost, you can't beat it because all of these were under $20. These I've been able to pick up for 10 to 15 bucks. Once you throw in the pot, roughly 5 for where I'm located, that you have this for $20. And for 20 bucks, you really can't beat it. So what I'm going to be doing now is getting this little guy potted up, and then we'll go through and just do a very, very light trim on this. So I've already got my pot here. It did have a mango that did not make it. The mango died. That we had a storm last summer and it got blown off the deck. So I'm just going to be throwing a little bit of dirt back in here into the bottom. I did place a piece of terracotta tile in the bottom of this pot, so that way the dirt would not spill out the underside when it goes to be watered. But this in general, you can see it's got a lot of roots on here. And what I'll do is I don't really want to lose any of the roots on here because I am upgrading the pot size. I'm just going to go through and just kind of squeeze and let the roots really just kind of come loose. I'm not ripping them. I'm just gently pulling them apart. And this is going to make a wonderful little addition to these. And we'll get it down in there. Now it does have some wonderful moss on the top, and the moss I'm pulling off because I'm actually going to top this with gravel, but I will add the moss back in there. Now there is a lot of mulch type soil that's along the top, and I'm trying to rake it off and get it down in there. And it's pretty well in the pot. It's just a slight upgrade on the pot size from the plastic container it was in. But like I said, this is something that I have been able to pick up from my local Home Depot for the last several years now, and it's actually something I really look forward to. Everyone's garden centers are different, and it might be that you might not find them at a Lowe's or a Home Depot. It could be a local nursery that you have, but go through those boxwoods and really pull them apart. See what these centralized trunks look like on the bottom. Sometimes it's going to be 5, 6 different individual stems. Other times you'll luck up and you'll find one really strong, sturdy trunk in there that is a perfect candidate for a boxwood topiary. Now, what I really like about these is that they're little to no effort. You pot them up and you leave them alone. I'm going to push that down in there just a little bit. Little to no effort. And for the cost, you can't beat it. So I'm going to add a little bit more soil into here. I'm just using basic potting soil. I'm not using anything crazy fancy. Now, in the spring, in April, next month, I will go through and hit all of my all of my boxwoods with TopBuxus. And that is a product that I started using last fall. And it is a spray that you hit the canopy of your boxwoods with. And it is a wonderful product. It puts out so much growth on them. And so I will go through and hit all of my boxwoods in general and allow them to flush out. Now this one, it's a little fuller on this side than it is on this one. This side's a little flat, but it's part of it's just where it's been in a nursery. All the boxwoods have been packed up on top of each other, and this side probably just had a little bit more space, and this one had a friend that was parked up beside of him. So he will be just fine. So I do have the moss that I pulled off the top, and I'm just going to place the moss back on there, and I'm going to kind of flatten it and rub it into place onto the soil, and it will be just fine. So I do have that. Now I will go back in later once it has been watered and hit this with a little bit of gravel. That's going to help a couple of different things. The gravel, A, it just looks really nice. B, it keeps the squirrels out. Squirrels are not going to dig through gravel. They're not going to waste their time with it. They're going to keep on going. So in my courtyard, I don't have any issues with squirrels whatsoever. There's no holes, little holes dug from the squirrels trying to bury things. They are not going to fool with the gravel. So if you want your pots to be left alone, add a little bit of gravel on there. But the other thing it does, the third, is that it is the moisture control. It's going to really keep that down, all of the moisture down in the pot, and it's going to keep it from drying out as fast. Now, this is a very thin terracotta pot. These are a little bit thicker terracotta, and so it does retain the moisture a little bit better than what this one will. But as long as it's not in direct sun, just getting baked up, it should be fine, especially during the heat of the summer when it's up in the 90s. So we've got this one potted up. Like I said, we will do just a very, very light trim. I do have my little garden snips, and this one, the best thing that you're going to be able to do is just to really be thorough in your examination of the boxwoods that are available to you. Finding them that have the shape that's already there, kind of being able to look at it. This one was naturally already a cone shape on its own. I had to do very little trimming to it. This, I could see that it had the potential to be limbed up, remove all of the lower limbs, and let it have that really nice shape. This one, I could go through and start pulling the limbs out, but in doing so, I'm going to end up with a tiny, tiny little ball on top, and it's just not going to be proportional. So what I will do is I'm just going to leave the little short stumpy trunk, have the ball, and then maybe at a later time, as it matures, then that's where you could really start to form it into a different shape. You could do a teardrop. You could let it just be a larger ball on a very short stem. Very similar to this one. This one has a very, very short trunk underneath it, but it's a nice little full sphere. So I'll go through and just start clipping these off and continually rotating it around to try to get an idea of the shape. You don't want to take too much off, especially this time of year, because by cutting it, you're going to tell the plant, hey, it's time to wake up. You need to put out some new growth, and it's a little early for that. So you don't want to cut it and trim your boxwoods too early, because in doing so, the plant is going to force out new growth, and then that new growth is going to be very tender. So if it's still freezing temperatures, or if it's in the summer when you've got the brutal heat, it can burn that new growth up. That new growth is going to be really tender. So think of it like a baby. If you have a baby, babies have very fair skin, and if they're outside, they're going to get sunburnt. So this one does, like I said, it needed very little trimming, but it was an excellent candidate to be a little topiary. So definitely check out your garden centers, see what you can find. You will be surprised. You will be very, very surprised, because for the price, for what this is of $10, it adds high impact into your garden for very little effort. And it does have a little bit of dead leaves in here. Kind of flush some of those out. And sometimes I will go through and I'll kind of rearrange the limbs just a bit to see if it might help on the fullness, or rearrange it just a bit, twist something slightly different than the way it's already growing. That may allow for a little bit better shape, but it also can give for some fullness just by stretching it out just a hair, but not to be so forceful that it breaks it. So that gave it a little bit more fullness. And what I will do once this has had time to really acclimate to this pot is hit it with scissors and just really get a refined, clean edge to this and crisp it up just a bit, because right now I am just using regular everyday garden shears. And the ones I'm using actually I really like a lot. These are Corona tools. There's all different kinds of options, but of what you can use. Okay, well that pretty well sums this up. Now I do have some leaves and things along the base of this. I will go through and clean them up. If I was doing a larger trim, I would actually wrap a sheet or something around this to collect all of those droppings off the plant, because if there's any type of fungus or anything on the leaves, you don't want that to go back onto the soil and then continue to spread disease and so on. So that is creating a topiary for under $20 that's going to add a lot of high impact to your garden, a lot of fun, and a lot of visual interest. So go out there, see what you can find, and add some charm to your garden.